I'm Heather Griscom. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Biology in the College of Science and Mathematics at James Madison University. My background is originally is in botany, so I began my research in the far reaches of tropical rainforests in Suriname, climbing tepuis, which are sandstone mountains in the middle of rainforests, collecting plants in rare places. And from there, I became more interested in ecology, and so I caught fruit bats in French Guiana for my master's thesis to look at their importance in seed dispersal. And then I became more interested in restoration because all around me were beautiful tropical rainforests, but at the same time I knew that there was a lot of deforestation and destruction of rainforests for agriculture, for timber, etc. So I spent a fair amount of time in Panama researching how to restore tropical rainforests after they'd been in cattle pasture for 50-something years. So my major research interests are in the American chestnut, or with American chestnut and American ginseng. Both are species that have been impacted negatively by humans in our forest ecosystems in southern Appalachia and the Shenandoah Valley. So essentially what I'm interested in is how to maintain and increase the ecological integrity of our forests. And ideally, we replant species that either have been missing from the system for a long time, like American chestnut, or their populations are declining. In the case of the American chestnut was one of our largest trees in our forest ecosystems. They were up to 100 feet tall by 10 feet wide. They were the granddaddies of our forest. So obviously this had a huge impact once they were gone, and they were infected by a fungus that was brought over by a Japanese chestnut in the early 1900s. And after that, it wiped them out throughout the range from Maine down to Mississippi. Different organizations have been working on bringing back the American chestnut for a long time. And one of these organizations is the American Chestnut Foundation. And they now have a hybrid that is a cross between the American chestnut and the Chinese chestnut that is resistant to this fungus. And we have the opportunity to replant these seeds back into our forest ecosystems. But ecological studies weren't done on the American chestnut before it was wiped out, and so we really have very little information on where it grows best. There's a lot of local lore surrounding it, and we do still have chestnut sprouts in our forest, but where they're sprouting isn't necessarily the best places to replant them. So American chestnuts, and then my other more recent interest is in American ginseng, which, unlike the American chestnut, is a very small plant. It occurs in the understory of our forest, and it's been harvested for its aphrodisiac properties and for other medicinal properties, mostly that are used by the Chinese. It's extremely valuable. It's like growing marijuana on your property. It goes between $500 and $800 a pound, depending on the season. But extremely valuable plant, and you have to dig up the root to actually get to the chemical compounds that are desirable. And the wild ginseng are much more potent, supposedly, than the cultivated ginseng, which is why they're harvested out of our woods. So areas that they used to be, they are no longer. Sometimes you can find one or two here and there in the forest, but they're not nearly at the populations that they used to be. And so I'm interested in identifying optimal locations for replanting American ginseng, both through experiments as well as through interviewing local people in Appalachia in terms of where they think American ginseng grows best. After doing research for a number of years, if you want any sort of impact on the community, you need to obviously get your results out there. And one way to get your results out there is by publishing in scientific journals, so at least it gets to the scientific community. And then the hope is that eventually, through newspaper articles, it will get back to the local communities as well, in more layman terms, so they can understand the work that's being done. So for example, the work that I'm doing with American ginseng, I haven't published any of these results yet because I actually have just started it, but there was an article that was published in the Harrisonburg newspaper, and after that I received 10 or 15 calls from different people in the community that wanted to know what I was doing, what I was hoping to find, etc. And so obviously it's really important to get your results back out there, otherwise no one will ever know the work that you've done. I would say that the communities that I'm working within, that I'm working in. So ideally, the hope is that we will reintroduce American ginseng back to national forests, and that's where you can actually harvest ginseng if you have a permit legally. And so we would work with federal agencies to reintroduce ginseng, and then also with the local people in terms of how to harvest the ginseng sustainably. The reason why I came to JMU, well, there's a couple of reasons, but one, it's ideally located for doing the kind of research that I'm doing, and also for my classes as well. I can get to a forest in 20 minutes, or 5 minutes if I'm here at the Arboretum. But we're in one of the most diverse systems and temperate systems in the world. Southern Appalachia forests are incredibly diverse. So it's a great place to actually do forest studies like I'm doing. So location is great, but the student body at JMU is also fantastic. I've had a number of research students in my lab working with me, and they come with excitement and interest, and they're smart, and they're really great to work with. So I've really had a great experience with JMU students. And then Harrisonburg is a great town to live in, and it's getting better and better.
This video was produced by